I earlier heard you say that we're born with our instincts stack, and that's different than what I'd heard another teacher say, that it's learned in the family. And I could say that that would make sense for me, learned in the family. So I was just wanting to dial that down a little bit.
Well, they're both true. So what happens is we're born with that lens of perception of what matters to us. And originally they thought the Enneagram types were learned in the family system. But then when brain science evolved, it became very clear that we're born with it, but our identifications, like when they did all the twin studies, they took these identical twins that were given up for adoption or triplets and put them in different family scenarios to see what was biological and what was environmental. And then they found it was almost 50-50. So twins might like a lot of the same things, but based on their family situation and their caregiving or lack thereof, form their attitudes around their characteristics. So with the Enneagram, what I found is that we're born with our type and we're born with our stacking. But the reason I stress that we must look at the stacking order of our instincts and our types, and then we need to look at the percentages we have for each type. So I have very high percentage of sexual and self-pres and a lower percentage or input from my social. So it means I can socially be blind. I said blind originally, and then a year and a half later, I said, no, because once we learn about it, we see it. So it's not totally blind, it's kind of immature. But so then the last thing after order, proportion is identification. What did your family system do with your type? I was the only one in my family and extended family that was sexual. Find the mirroring. My mother had sexual last, so it was like, why do you want to know that? Or why does that matter? Oh, yeah, don't touch me. But she didn't like anybody to touch her. But I wanted the closeness as a sexual. Physically, then I wanted it intellectually, emotionally.
Yeah, we have the same stacking, and my sexual attraction is close to the self-pres. Maybe for the sequel, as Sarah suggested. I thought I was a 964. My dad was a 4. He's been gone for a couple of years, and my boyfriend of 6 years is a 2. And now I feel very 962.
Well, here's the wonderful thing about our beloved nines is they take on the form and shape of the person they're most attached to. And on another piece that's very important, and Tom Condon introduced, and research kind of agreed with it, so it's possible, is that we have the imprinting of our parents.
Mhm.
So in my case, as the 874, my father was an 8, my mother was a 4. So where'd the 7 come from? But anyhow, that we could say I interjected those. But my brothers didn't. They don't have the 7, and only one brother has the 4. So it has to be biological. Even if we have siblings, even if we're twins, we have a different relationship to each person in our family. And why? Because there's a dynamic created with my set of types and your set of types, Krista. And then we have our childhood experiences of what we're looking for and our stackings of both our tritypes and our instincts. And when that matches with interest, we feel that ding, oh yeah, there's excitement. But if we get the feeling when we meet someone that we don't like it, it's usually because there's something about them on an unconscious level that reminds us of not good. A lot of times, 6s will say, if people don't smile. So when I first made my first set of cards, I found a very happy 2 face, that was smiling. It was just a head with the face. I don't know if any of you saw my first set, but I used to have that online. And then the sixes would choose that card because, of course, the six won't choose the six card. And I'd say, well, why did you choose this card? And I wouldn't just ask about the face. And they go, oh, well, I like to see a friendly face. And that's when I first learned how important that was to the six. And then I went in pursuit of trying to understand how everybody, what you want to see. Well, a friendly face is nice, of course. Biologically, we're going to be attracted to it. But if it's too friendly, I'm like, if you want to play, sure. But if you're like attentively friendly too much, I want to know what you want from me. And that could be two things. That could be gut type. That could be sexual if I don't feel the twinship. Or, very important, it could be that I didn't get that attunement from my mother. But I did get it from my nanny for 7 years. She lived with us. But she was, a 953. She was invisible, self-proud.
Catherine, my dad is a 1 and my mom is a 2. I'm probably a 5 and I go to like 1 and 2. I don't know.
Yeah, but see, yeah, they're not in your tritype. And the difference between the 469 and the 479 is huge because, again, as I talked about earlier, the 479, you're receptive, and the 469 is much deeper. So the archetype of the deepest person is actually 469, not 479, not 459, not any other combination. So when we talk about person who has the most depth is 469, for what it's worth.
Catherine, do you mind? Sorry, can you clarify what that means? The person that has most depth? Sorry, just me. I'm just jumping in quickly.
So when the archetypes became very visual, and I kept interviewing, and every study I did, I asked people what tritype they are, what type, what instinct, did they have a parent with that tritype or not, or type or instinct. And then I asked them how confident they are. And I deliberately put in a comment section. So if they check off, I'm absolutely certain, but then they fill in the comments. Well, this person thinks I'm that, and that person thinks I'm this. And so I'm not sure, but they just checked off that they were absolutely certain. And then I know that they have 6 or 9 in the tritype. And then I look at the rest of what they answer. So I can sort out people with certainty, because that's the first thing people ask me is, how do you know you're working with the right types? Well, from the very beginning, I was making certain I knew. And then compared and contrast every questionnaire, and you're all free to use that questionnaire. It's very powerful. And I used it in every field, and people just reveal themselves, or at least part of themselves. But more specifically, the 479 doesn't want to go deep. Even if they have 4, they want to keep it light and on the surface. Whereas 469, 4 and 6 have angst. They have existential fears. They want to understand. And so they go deeper trying to make sense of their circumstances. Where the 7s in that tritype try to deny that 4's need for depth. They might search for it separately, but it's hard for them to stay attuned on a deep level because they're trying to avoid being rejected. And so the 7 is trying to be cool and not a problem. And the minute the 479 shows negativity, they're not as appreciated. People say, well, I thought you were more spiritual. They get, because in the beginning, they're really trying to be an ideal. And then if they show their own disappointment, then, wait, I thought you were positive. And so then they learn very young to not show it. Whereas the 6 can't avoid it. They are going to ask for support. They're going to show it in their expressions. They're going to display concern, which does what? It brings people towards them. Are you okay? Whereas the 479 is, you have to look closely because they're concealing it. It's lighter. It's not going as deep. So the most emotionally introspective tritype is the 469, and yet it's the least accurately typed. Everyone avoids it, but it's actually very common, especially in typology. But that's because, remember what I said? The archetypes of 6 were lost. The intuitive 6, lost. The sexual 6, lost. Everything was built around the self-pres social 6. So a whole category was missed.